Life has a way of taking us through seasons we never expected, times when everything seems to go wrong, when the road ahead is dark and the weight of the world feels like it's pressing down on our shoulders. These are the valleys we walk through. The valleys are places of struggle, heartache, confusion, and challenge. They are those moments when the mountaintop seems so far away and we feel like we're stuck in the shadows of doubt and fear. But let me remind you, just because you find yourself in the valley doesn't mean you're lost. The valley is not the end, it's simply a part of the journey. We need to understand that valleys are not foreign to the human experience. Everyone, no matter their position, their faith, or their background, will walk through some kind of valley. Some valleys are caused by circumstances beyond our control: illness, financial hardship, loss of a loved one, or a betrayal that cuts deep. Other valleys we bring upon ourselves through bad decisions, mistakes, and missteps. Regardless of the cause, one thing is for sure: the valley is a place we all encounter our way to higher ground. When we talk about the valley, it's important to realize that it is not a place of punishment. It's not some divine conspiracy to make our lives miserable. No, the valley is a part of the process that molds us, shapes us, and refines us for what's ahead. It is in these low places, when everything is stripped away, that we learn who we truly are. We learn what we're made of when we have nothing left but God. The valley forces us to look inward, to evaluate our beliefs, our strengths, and even our weaknesses. There's something about the valley that challenges our perception of ourselves and of God. When we're in the midst of it, it's easy to feel abandoned, like we're walking alone through a dry, barren land with no way out. We question where God is, why He's allowing us to go through this, and how much longer we have to endure the pain. But it's important to remember that the valley is not a sign of abandonment, it's an invitation to deepen our trust in God. The valley is the place where we learn that our reliance must be on something greater than ourselves. It's in the valley that we learn to let go of our pride, our self-sufficiency, and our need to control everything. The valley doesn't last forever, but while we're there, it does serve a purpose. It is in the valley that our faith is tested. We may start the journey with faith as small as a mustard seed, but the more we walk through the valley, the more we realize that God is right there with us every step of the way. The valley pushes us to trust Him when we can't see the way out, when the future looks uncertain, and when the odds seem impossible. But it's precisely in these moments that God shows up in ways we never imagined, proving that even in our darkest hour, He is still working on our behalf. So when you find yourself in the valley, don't be discouraged. Understand that it's not your final destination. It's a place where you can grow, learn, and come to a deeper understanding of who you are in God. The valley is not the end of your story. It's just a chapter, part of the process that's preparing you for something greater. Hold on to that truth and keep moving forward. The mountaintop is waiting, and your journey through the valley is part of what will make you stronger, wiser, and ready for what lies ahead. In the midst of the valley, when the world feels heavy and your heart is burdened, there's one thing you can always count on: God's presence. When everything else seems to be fading away, when the noise of life is drowning out your thoughts, when you feel isolated in your pain, this is when the most important truth stands firm: God is with you. You are never alone in the valley. Now, we often think that God is only with us when things are going well. When the sun is shining and life is moving smoothly, it's easy to acknowledge God's presence. But the real test of faith comes when we find ourselves walking through the valley, where things feel uncertain, scary, and downright overwhelming. It's in these moments when we feel like we're surrounded by darkness that we need to recognize that God is still with us. His presence doesn't depend on our circumstances. He doesn't leave us when the road gets tough. He walks with us every step of the way, even when we can't see Him. One of the most powerful promises in the Bible is found in Psalm 23:4, where David says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Notice the key words here, you are with me. In the valley, we often experience fear, doubt, and a sense of being lost. But God is there walking beside us, guiding us through. His presence doesn't mean the valley is going to disappear immediately. It doesn't mean that the pain will stop instantly or that the road will suddenly become smooth. But it does mean that we are not walking through it alone. God is with us in the darkness, comforting us, strengthening us, and carrying us when we can't walk any further. God's presence in the valley doesn't just offer comfort, it brings power. When you're weak, his strength becomes your strength. When you're confused, his wisdom guides you. When you're afraid, his peace calms your spirit. God doesn't just stand by idly in the valley. He is actively working in the background, shaping you, protecting you, and preparing you for what's to come. His presence is a shield that guards your heart and mind, keeping you from despair. The beauty of God's presence is that it's constant. He is with you in the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, and in the loud, chaotic times when everything around you feels uncertain. His presence isn't fleeting or conditional. It doesn't depend on your actions or whether you feel worthy of it. God's presence is a gift, a reminder that no matter where we go, we cannot escape his love, his care, or his comfort. When we learn to recognize and rely on God's presence in the valley, we begin to understand that the valley is not a place of abandonment. It's a place where we can draw closer to him, where his voice becomes clearer and his love becomes more tangible. We may not always feel it in the moment, but we must trust that he is there, working in ways we can't see, holding us together when we feel like we're falling apart. So when you walk through the valley, don't forget that God is with you. His presence is the one constant that will never change, and it is the very thing that will see you through. The valley may be a difficult place, but with God by your side, you can face anything. Keep walking, because he's right there with you every step of the way. The valley is not just a place where we endure pain and hardship, it is also a place where our faith is refined. In fact, it is often in the valley that our faith grows stronger and deeper than it ever could on the mountaintops. The reason is simple. It's in the valley that we are faced with challenges that push us beyond what we can see, what we can understand, and what we can control. The valley forces us to lean not on our own strength, but on the power of God. It is in the valley that our faith is tested, stretched, and made more powerful. Think about it when life is smooth, when the sun is shining and everything is falling into place. It's easy to say we trust God. It's easy to lift our hands and worship and declare that God is good. But the real test of trust comes when the world around us falls apart. When the valley hits, when the storms come, that's when our faith is truly put to the test. Will we trust God even when we can't see the way forward? Will we trust him when the promises seem distant? When the answers don't come quickly, and when the road ahead looks uncertain? Faith doesn't grow in the comfort of the easy places, it grows in the fire, in the struggle, in the moments when we are forced to hold on to something greater than ourselves. You see, God doesn't waste our suffering. Every challenge, every moment of uncertainty, every low point is an opportunity for our faith to grow. It's in the valley that we learn to trust God in ways we never could if everything was always going right. The valley strips away the distractions and the false securities we rely on, and it reveals the raw, pure strength of faith that can only come from trusting God with everything, our hopes, our dreams, and even our fears. In the valley, we learn to be still and know that God is God. When we're in the middle of the storm, we can either allow the fear and the doubt to overtake us, or we can choose to stand firm in our trust in God. And the more we choose to trust, the more our faith grows. It's like muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The valley is the spiritual gym where we build our trust in God's promises. It's where we learn to rely on him for everything, not just the things we can't do, but even for the small everyday moments. The beauty of faith in the valley is that it isn't based on what we can see or feel, It's based on the character of the one we trust. God's faithfulness doesn't change based on our circumstances. Even when we don't understand why we're going through what we're going through, we can trust that God is still good, still faithful, and still working on our behalf. The valley becomes a place where we learn that our trust in God isn't conditional on our circumstances, but is rooted in his unchanging nature. So if you find yourself in the valley today, don't despair. Your faith is not failing, it's growing. Trust in the process. Trust that God is using this time to strengthen your faith, to deepen your reliance on him, and to prepare you for what's ahead. The valley is not the end of your story, it's a chapter in a much bigger journey. And as you walk through it, you can be confident that your faith will come out stronger on the other side, refined like gold in the fire. The valley is not just a place of struggle, it is also a place of growth. When we walk through the valleys of life, we are being shaped and refined in ways we often don't understand at the moment. It's easy to see the valley as a punishment, a burden, or a setback, but in reality, it is often the very place where God does his most transformative work. The valley is where the deepest lessons are learned, where character is built, and where we are prepared for the things that God has ahead for us. Consider the process of a seed growing into a plant. A seed must first be buried in the soil, hidden in darkness before it can sprout and begin to grow. It doesn't become a plant overnight. It must endure the soil, the rain, and the conditions of the earth before it breaks through the surface. In the same way, we must often go through the dark, difficult times in life in order to experience the growth that God has for us. The valley, though uncomfortable, is the soil where our faith, patience, and resilience are cultivated. When we're in the valley, it can feel like everything around us is crumbling. It's easy to focus on the negative, to see only the pain and the difficulty. But what we fail to realize in those moments is that the valley is a place where God is doing the deep, hidden work. In the darkness of the valley, we are being refined. The challenges and hardships we face force us to let go of things we thought were important, to surrender areas of our lives we've been holding on to, and to trust that God knows what he's doing, even when we don't. This growth is not always immediate or obvious. Sometimes it takes time to see the change in ourselves. But trust me, the valley is never wasted. The lessons you learn in the valley are lessons that will serve you for the rest of your life. It is in the valley that you begin to understand what it truly means to rely on God. You realize that your strength is not your own, that you can't make it through on your own power. In the valley, you come face to face with your weaknesses, your limitations, and your need for God. And this is exactly where he wants you to be dependent on him, not on yourself. The valley also teaches us endurance. The road through the valley may not be quick, and the journey may feel longer than we ever imagined. But it is in the valley that we learn to persevere. The pain, the struggle, the waiting, all of these things build endurance in us. And endurance is the quality that prepares us for greater things. If we never go through the valley, we'll never develop the strength to face the mountains. The endurance we gain in the valley is what will carry us through the challenges of life, helping us stand firm when the next trial comes. So when you find yourself in the valley, don't fight against it. Embrace the process. Know that God is doing something in you that could never happen on the mountaintop. The valley may be difficult, but it is not in vain. You are being shaped, refined, and prepared for what God has ahead. And when you emerge from the valley, you will be stronger, wiser, and more prepared to step into the fullness of your purpose. In the valley, it can be hard to see past the immediate challenges. The weight of the moment can cloud our vision, and we can become overwhelmed by the pain and uncertainty. But in the midst of it all, one thing remains certain: there is hope for the future. The valley is not the end of your story. It is merely a chapter in a much bigger narrative. Every difficult season, every struggle, every heartache is preparing you for something greater that lies ahead. The valley is temporary, but the breakthrough is permanent. Sometimes we become so focused on our current situation that we forget the bigger picture. It's easy to get trapped in the mindset of this is all there is, especially when the road ahead looks dark and endless. But if we shift our perspective and understand that the valley is just a moment in time, we begin to see the hope that lies on the other side. God has a plan for our lives, a plan that stretches far beyond the pain we may be experiencing right now. Even when we can't see the path ahead, we must trust that God is guiding us and that there is a greater purpose behind everything we face. The promise of hope for the future is woven throughout Scripture. God tells us that He has plans to prosper us, not to harm us, plans to give us a future and a hope. These promises remind us that no matter how difficult the valley is, it is not the final destination. The valley may be a place of trial, but it is also a place of transformation. It is a place where God prepares us for the blessings and opportunities that are waiting on the other side. The struggle you're facing today is shaping you into the person you need to be for the next season of your life. The hope for the future is also about understanding that the valley is not wasted. God is working in ways we often can't see behind the scenes, preparing us for something greater. In the valley, we develop qualities like patience, resilience, and trust in God that are necessary for the next steps in our journey. The future holds greater things, but it requires us to be ready, and sometimes the preparation comes through the very trials we try to avoid. The valley is a place where God refines us, where He teaches us the lessons we need to learn to handle the blessings that are coming our way. There is also a deeper hope in knowing that the valley does not last forever. The season of hardship is temporary, but the joy that follows is eternal. As Scripture says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. The pain you are enduring today will eventually give way to the peace and joy that come from seeing the fruit of your perseverance. The valley may last for a season, but it is only a season. The breakthrough, the healing, the victory, and the fulfillment of God's promises are all on the horizon. When we hold on to the hope for the future, we are able to endure the valley with faith. We know that God is not only with us in the valley, but He is also preparing us for something greater. The future is bright and the victory is certain. Hold on to the hope that the valley is not the end, it is simply a passage, and on the other side, God has something magnificent waiting for you. So don't lose heart. Keep pressing forward, knowing that your future is filled with God's goodness and the best is yet to come. The valley is a place where we often find ourselves questioning our purpose. We look around at the challenges, the pain, and the confusion, and it's easy to feel as though we've lost our way. We wonder if this struggle is all there is, or if our dreams and desires are ever going to come to fruition. But here's the truth, the valley is not a place of abandonment, it's a place of preparation. It's a place where God is working behind the scenes, positioning you for the fulfillment of your purpose. You are not in the valley by mistake. Every moment, every setback, every tear is part of the plan that God has for you, and it is leading you to something greater. One of the hardest things to understand in the midst of the valley is that God still has a purpose for us, even when we can't see it. The valley can cloud our vision, making us focus only on the immediate pain. But if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, we begin to see that the valley is not a detour from our purpose, it's part of the journey toward it. There is a divine purpose for everything you are going through, even if it doesn't make sense right now. God uses the difficult times to refine us, to shape our character, and to build us into the person we need to be in order to fulfill the destiny He has set before us. The valley is also a place where we learn to trust in God's timing. We may have our own plans, our own timeline, but God's timing is perfect. When we find ourselves in the valley, it's easy to get frustrated with the waiting, to feel as though we're not moving forward, or that God has forgotten us. But the truth is that God is never late. The valley is a season of preparation. It is a time where God is working in us and for us, making sure that we are ready for the next step in our journey. He is not in a hurry, and He doesn't want us to be either. The valley teaches us to trust in God's perfect timing, to wait on him, and to believe that everything is unfolding just as it should. As we walk through the valley, we are also learning to rely on God more fully. It's in these low moments that we are reminded that we are not self-sufficient. We cannot make it on our own, and that's okay. The valley strips away our pride and our reliance on our own strength, leaving us with nothing but the grace of God to carry us through. It is in the valley that we learn to lean on him, to let go of our control, and to trust that he is leading us to something greater. God is not only with us in the valley, but he is also guiding us, providing for us, and preparing us for the next chapter in our journey. The valley is not the end of the story, it is a chapter in the ongoing story of your life. And as hard as it may seem, it is a necessary part of your growth. Without the valley, there would be no mountaintop. Without the struggle, there would be no strength. The valley is where God does his most powerful work in us, preparing us for the purpose he has set before us. It's a place where we are shaped, refined, and made ready to step into the fullness of the life he has promised us. So don't give up when you find yourself in the valley. Embrace it as a part of your purpose, knowing that God is using this time to prepare you for something greater than you could ever imagine. Keep moving forward, because the best is yet to come.